Hi, this is Steve Adler. Got a minute? We're going to have our daily talk about what's happening in Austin. This has been mostly about the virus. We're going to go through some of the numbers, some additional modeling numbers that are new. People seem to like that and appreciate having that forward-looking information. Also brought in Ken Zarifis, who leads the Teachers Association union here in Austin, AISD, who's going to talk to us about teachers' perspective on COVID. And obviously schools are a big deal. We'll talk about some of the things that are happening in schools. But before we do that, let's hit the numbers real fast. So let's begin with the dashboards as we do every night. The yellow numbers off to the left, new admissions up at 78. That's a high number for us. We've been pretty much staying around the 70 number. If you look at the graph in the middle of the page, we were right there at that 70, which is the point between the orange and the red. We're up at 78, which puts us into kind of graphically into that red area. But whether or not we actually enter risk red, where we need to drastically change behaviors, depends on the speed at which we enter this area. We talked about that before, but now I think we can understand it. If you look at the increase that we were having back beginning in middle of May up through the end of June, really, you can see our spike was pretty extreme. At that rate, at that trajectory, we were going to run into problems really quickly. The communities maintained a change in behavior to flatten that out a little bit. It lowers the speed, and that gives us more space to decide whether or not to do something more drastic like a shelter in place. So the number is 78. Our 7-day running average is 71.1. My hope is that we can stay plateaued out in that 70-ish range. And that's what we're trying to see if we can get done. On the right side of the page, new cases today in white, 572. That's not inconsistent with the kinds of numbers we're having. Still high, though. Our 7-day moving average, as you can see, is 487. Our number was 553 yesterday. Our 7-day moving average, by the way, yesterday was at 69.6. So we've gone up from basically 70 to 71. The number of people we have hospitalized, our 7-day moving average is 452. That's a 7-day average. The number of people we have in our hospitals today is 492. So again, we're still increasing on hospitalizations. Remember, hospitalizations reflect behaviors 3 weeks ago. My hope is that we see that number beginning to plateau, where our daily number, our 492 number, begins to look more like the 452. Our 7-day running average at ICUs is 145. The number of people we have in ICUs tonight, 159. That's an increase of 5 over yesterday's number of 154. So again, we're still headed on an incline with respect to hospitalizations and ICUs. Ventilators today, 7-day running average is 90. Number of people on ventilators today is 92. That's actually, is 97. 7-day running average is 90. On ventilators, 97. That's an increase of 5 people over yesterday. So you can see on those indicators, ventilators, ICUs, and hospitalizations, we're still headed up. Let's go to the next dashboard. Next dashboard shows you some of the numbers we just talked about, plus some additional numbers. You can see that the total number of cases, once we add the 572, gets us up to 16,570. The green numbers in the middle are the daily numbers. We compared those to the 7-day running average just a moment ago. All right, let me show you some charts from the University of Texas. The University of Texas COVID-19 Modeling Consortium that Lauren Myers, Dr. Myers, is part of, is about to publish their own dashboard on the website. I think it'll be up tomorrow. When it comes up, we will post the link for it. But this becomes now additional data that the community can use on a going forward basis. This talks about the R0 number, the RT number in our area, our 5-county area. Remember, if the number is above 1, that means that every person who's infected is going to, modeling generally, infect another 1 point however many people, or 2 people, or 3 people. You want that number to get below 1, because if it's below 1, eventually your virus numbers come down, because every one person, if they're infecting less than 1 person, then your virus in the community begins to drop. You can see that based on the behaviors that we have in this community, more people social distancing, more people wearing masks more religiously. She's calculating at this point, as you can see on this graph, that we may be dropping below 1 right now, which means we're lowering the virus load in our city, but only so long as we maintain these behaviors. And this assumes that we're not about to see a spike for the July 3rd weekend, because over the next week is when we would expect to see that spike if one was going to happen. This chart again shows you that, beginning back in March, the potential for people to infect one another was pretty high. We did the shelter in place. The number came down, stayed below 1. And then when we got into May, when we started opening up the economy, people were no longer mandated to wear masks. They weren't wearing masks. The number started going back up again, especially in May, latter part of May, June, into June. And then we started changing our behaviors. We made masks mandatory again, and you can see the numbers starting down. That's one of the charts on the UT dashboard that should be up tomorrow. Let me show you the next chart that also comes from that same dashboard that ought to be up tomorrow. This is just some information. The reproduction number estimated at this point is somewhere between 0.51 and 1.43. Obviously, a huge difference between those two numbers. You're either cutting the virus or you're increasing it. But the most likely number in that range, the mean in that range, is 0.8. And that's below 1. And that's really good. So as a community, don't take your foot off the brake. Keep it applied. We have to lower the overall virus in the community as best we can. If we can do that right now, we're doing better than so many other parts of the state of Texas. The probability that the epidemic is growing is about 22%, which means that over 50% chance that at this point we're moderating those totals. Doubling time, with it declining at this point, if we can maintain that level, we don't look at doubling times. What do we expect to see in 14 days? If the community can maintain their behaviors right now and don't let up, keep it with the same kind of discipline, is that we stay pretty much flat over the next 14 days in a plateau. Why don't you go to the next graph? We can see some of this visually. And again, this is on the UT dashboard. We're appreciative of Dr. Myers posting this information so that people in the public have access to it. These are the green dots that are the actual number of hospital admissions in our city. This is the one that we're trying to stay below 70. It'd be great if we could get below that. We get below 40. Then we start getting back in that yellow area. We get below 5, which is where we were back in May, when we just before we had reopened the economy. During that period of time, we get back there, then we're in a much healthier place, a lot less virus in our community. But you can see those green dots. They show you where we are. You can see that we've come up with a number now that is at 78. And then you see those gray lines that head out. Each one of those is another possible universe. Every one of those lines is just as possible as any other one of those lines. But when you have more lines that are just as possible, all kind of grouped together, you get medians or means, and that's what that green line is. We should be pleased that we're seeing that line right now as opposed to one that's going up. But I tell you, we need to be able to maintain that, and we need to be prepared for something that looks like one of those other lines that are above us. And that's what the planning is, what the hospitals are planning for, what the health department is planning for as well. But that tells you the 7-day moving average. Let's look at the next chart. That will also be on the University of Texas website. This is a chart that takes a look at, I think, total hospitalizations. This one's ICUs. Let's go to the next one first. Let's look at the one that's total hospitalizations, because the ICU one will make more sense when we hit the other graph first. The one that had the 70 were the new people in. Of course, those new people move into the hospital. Some people move out of the hospital with discharges. And then what you're left with is what is the census that's in the hospital itself. So we had a chart that showed us what the hospital census was. I don't know if you have that, Anita. If not, then just go to the ICU one that we had a second ago. All right, so this is total hospitalizations. When you look at it on the University of Texas website, it'll be a clearer picture than my screenshot shows. But again, this shows our incline up. The number at the top of the page is 1,000, and you can see that the median protection was flat at that point. So we can maintain the behaviors, maintain the masking, maintain the social distancing, we're flat. If we actually want to start decreasing the virus, then we need to do even better. And then the last chart was the one that spoke to ICUs, and it was a real similar line to what we saw at the hospitals, with ICUs looking like they're plateauing. And we now have to maintain that plateau. That's hospitalizations again. We have to maintain that plateau for the ICUs as best we can. All right, I'm now going to move away from the exhibits and talk to you about some of the things that we're seeing nationally. Texas is in real tough place right now. Texas numbers in the state are going up, just like our cases are going up, like our hospitalizations are going up. That's happening all over the state. Some of the places in the state are not seeing the same potential plateauing that we might be seeing here. I'm nervous to even show the community the plateauing because I don't want people to relax. This is now the time to keep doing what we're doing and to do more of it. But we have a chart that shows what's happening in the rest of the country as well, because now we have more and more states that are dealing with what it is that Texas is dealing with. People spend a lot of time at home in a shelter in place. They go out to open up the economy. The weather's good, and they think that it's over. They hear messaging from Washington that it's over, that it's not something to be concerned about. They start getting closer and closer to people, wearing masks less frequently, and then no surprise, numbers go up. This shows you, by the way, what's happening in the United States right now. Compared to Sweden, which was a country that tried just to do mass herd immunity. Didn't work for them. They've now taken more significant steps so that it would come down. You can see what happened in Europe and in Canada and what's happened in the United States. My concern is that while this is happening in the United States, just like with Texas, if we have a surge and need help with our ICUs, it's going to be harder and harder to get that support because more and more of the country is dealing with the same kind of things that Texas is dealing with. Let's go to, thank you very much for that, Anita. One of the cities that is dealing with this a lot right now is Chicago. The mayor in Chicago is trying to get her community to be disciplined, to wear masks, to do the social distancing. She's saying the same thing that the governor's saying, that if people don't do this, then we're going to have to do a shelter in place. We're going to have to do something that's more drastic. I love the way that Mayor Lightfoot said it. She was asked if she would tighten restriction if cases continue to grow in Chicago. And she said, quote, "I won't just turn the car around." She said, "I'm going to shut it off. I'm going to kick you out, and I'm going to make you walk home." It's just, she's a great mayor, and I appreciate the opportunity to be able to be working with her. So with respect to virus, I want to talk about schools because there's new information on happening in schools. And let's bring in Ken Zarifis. Ken, thanks so much for joining us here tonight.
Thank you so much, Mayor Adler. I'm real happy to be here.
So we had join us the Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Cruz, about a week ago. A lot more unknowns at that point as to what would happen, what schools were allowed to do or required to do. The state agency, TEA, was saying, giving rules. But by way of background for everybody, when he was on, he talked about different approaches that the school district was thinking about doing. In the meantime, the health department here in Austin, Travis County, said that schools should not reopen for on-site work at least until September 8th of 2020. So nobody on site. The reason he said he did that was because the virus load was too great in the community, and there was insufficient time to be able to work out what plans might look like if you were to bring anybody back to school. He did express concerns that if you brought everybody back to school, it'd be too many people. There'd be, with the virus load we have, too many teachers would get sick, too many staff members, too many students would get sick. But this gives us time to have a conversation about whether or not it makes sense to operate, say, at a lower occupancy. Maybe you just bring back students that are at risk, students that have to be at school. And the question is it safer for those students to be in school or not be in school? But my gut tells me, and the default scenario Dr. Escott said for people to assume was that we probably, for at the very least, the vast majority of people, we wouldn't be going back to schools, and obviously that pertains to extracurricular activities like football and other kinds of things like that. So anyhow, he said that rule. When we did that here locally, we weren't sure whether or not that actually would be enforceable, because the TEA, the state agency, hadn't indicated yet whether a local area could go to their communities and make an order like that. It was important to us that we do that here in Austin, Travis County, because we were working with our independent school districts and we're sharing information and the like. But what happens in our school obviously has a huge impact on health in the community generally. The superintendent in AISD sent out a note to families saying he was going to suspend in-person education, just do virtual instruction for the first 3 weeks of the school year. That was consistent with what Dr. Escott had ordered. And today we learned from the TEA that they have reversed their position and now say that school districts, if told by their local authority that they cannot do in on-site school, have to abide by the local orders. So that's all the events that go through. Ken, tell us what your association is, what Education Austin is, and then tell us what teachers think about all this.
Well, thank you, Mayor Adler. I really appreciate it. My name's, I'm Ken Zarifis. I'm president of Education Austin, and we're a merged union. We're both the NEA, the National Education Association, the American Federation of Teachers, the Texas AFT, and the TSTA, or Texas State Teachers Association. We're the largest public union and public sector union in the city, and we've got about 3,000 members that are teachers, bus drivers, custodians, front office. We cover the gamut of employment in the district and represent them in negotiating every year. Really what, the news that we're hearing is really validating to our position. As many people know, we came out last week we had a press conference that put a position of we wanted no in-person meeting at all in the schools for 9 weeks. We called for a 9-week wait that would allow us to weekly look at the numbers that you're looking at, Mayor, to make decisions based on science and medicine, to make sure those essential workers that may have to be in a campus or delivering items that they would that we'd like to see them continue to receive hero pay, which is time and a half. And that we believe that teachers have a right to decide whether they want to enter a school or not. That it's not just because of a certain medical condition, but the condition of fear. And I think that what you've talked about, and there's a great deal of fear in our communities, and rightfully so. This is something that's unprecedented. And we want to see decisions. We decided as a union that we wanted to make decisions based first and foremost on the safety and well-being of students, teachers, school employees, and the families they're associated with. And if that meant that we don't go back to school, then that's okay. We can continue to do online. It's not that teachers say they don't want to work. It's just saying that we're going to do it online. And we're very glad to see that the district and Dr. Cruz decided to do 3 weeks. We still don't believe it's quite enough. I think we need to get out to 9 weeks. And continually look at the numbers and make sound decisions, sound scientific decisions. But we think this is a beginning. And that's really important because the fear that's involved, we're having teachers, Mayor, we're having teachers resign. I've had six notifications of teachers resigning or retiring based on their fear just in the last week alone. It's a real concern, and we have to be listening to them and validating and supporting their concern. Within this household, my own household, my partner is an art teacher. We're not sending our kids back to school, and she doesn't want to go back to school until it's safe, and it's understandable. The numbers, Dr. Escott, I mean, goodness, the numbers he brought up really made a sobering reality about what we're facing. And we deeply appreciated that because I think it underscored what our thoughts were and what we were determining by the data that we had been seeing, that we really need to wait. We want kids to learn, but they need to be healthy and alive to teach them. And that's important. So, I think, we have teachers that have family members that they're caretakers of. We have teachers that have had chronic problems, health problems. So this is a good decision, and we're happy that it happened and encouraged. We just want more, but we're in a good place right now.
Do you see any kind of scenarios where, in your mind's eye, school campuses are open for on-site schooling?
Well, that's a great question because I think we have to. You mentioned a little bit earlier about at-risk kids, right? And the students that we don't want, as we all kind of refer to, falling through the cracks or the highest needs. But I think we have to look at who are those families and who are we talking about. And predominantly, they tend to be communities of color, families of color. And if we believe that our campuses might not be safe, it may not be the best idea to just be bringing students of color back into those spaces, because then that feeds into the whole issues around institutional racism, of avoiding being operating from an anti-racist lens. So I think we have to think about what that actually means. But I do see a way forward if we take the time to determine what is best. I think the online instruction needs to strengthen and develop. I think they'll get there. I think we'll have a good product. I think a little bit more time is needed to develop that. We're looking at school opening up in less than a month. It's really fast. And so I think the district needs a little bit more time to develop that and to feel more comfortable. And the blended approach, again, we're very nervous about the blended approach. You create one online instructional lesson, and then you have an in-person instructional lesson. And these are teachers that many have families that are also teaching their kids at home online. And so we have to realize the weight that's going to be on teachers who I have met few professions, if that go above and beyond the teachers and school employees do, the bus drivers and the people that are working in this district. So I think this week we have to be mindful of that because we want them to also have opportunities for their families. But I think we can get there if we take steps at a time, a week at a time, continually talk with the district and develop those approaches to reentry. And maybe it's at the end of this semester, maybe it's middle semester, maybe this thing continues all semester and we get that break at the winter break that is a natural kind of reentry then after the first of the year.
Nothing's easy and nothing's simple, and we're in a period where it's just so hard to predict 8 weeks out the world we're going to be living in. It makes it hard for everybody. Ken, thanks for laying out the teacher stuff. You until you actually sit and talk to somebody in every industry almost, you don't really know how that industry or those people are dealing with the virus. But the more people that you talk to in more places, there's uncertainty for everyone. There are people that are really hurting in our city on lots of levels. And this is not an easy or simple answer anywhere.
I think you're right, and I think all options we have right now are not good options. We just have to take the best of the worst, and that's what we think we're landing on.
Well, great. Ken, please thank your union members for what they do. We teachers are kind of the backbone of so much of what happens in our lives, and I've heard more than one occasion, more than a dozen occasions, more than dozens of occasions, people who are trying to homeschool right now and take their kids through instruction, and now even more than they ever did before, appreciate the work that teachers do with a class full of kids. So thank everybody.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for joining us here.
Thank you so much, Mayor Adler. We truly appreciate it. On behalf of our 3,000 members, thank you so much.
Okay, Ken, take care. All right, we're going to close today. I got some awesome pictures sent to me by a 10-year-old, Sagan. Sagan is doing all the things that he loves to do at home. He is a creative, active. He loves to read, but he wanted to share some of his favorite recent projects, learning new things at home. He writes, here is me learning how to sew on a sewing machine. It's fun trying all of the different stitches. Now, there's a pretty handy thing to be doing. He said, here am I de-icing the deep freeze with a face shield. He's doing it for the first time. He said, I like seeing the chunks of ice go flying out. And on a hot day, working with ice like that seems like a pretty good idea. His mom, Sagan's mom, keeps bees. So here is Sagan helping mom to harvest and bottle their own honey. But he did want all of us to know that sewing and defrosting are his favorite activities. I certainly empathize. Everyone knows that no matter how important or unusual or exciting a parent's projects are, kids are hard to impress. Sagan, thanks so much for sending me in the pictures. I need other people to send me some pictures too. And with that, I wish you all a good evening. Take care of yourselves and please be safe.